It's the end of January. Your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. You know, the time you chose way back on January 1st when everything felt possible, and you hit snooze. And immediately that sinking feeling hits your stomach. Or maybe that shiny new planner that gave you so much dopamine 3 weeks ago, you haven't opened it in days. The bedtime routine? We don't even talk about the bedtime routine. And here is what your brain might be whispering to you right now. See, here we go again. You can't do this. You are not cut out for habits and routines. Why do you try this every year? Maybe you should just stop. If that is the narrative playing in your mind, please hear me. Nothing's gone wrong. In fact, that resistance that you're feeling, it might just be a sign that you're doing all of this exactly right. And we're going to talk about it today because I think understanding why growth feels so bad is actually the key to making it happen. I'm Paula Engebretson, and this is episode 339 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Here we are. Depending on when you're listening to this, it's either the tail end of January or very early February, or maybe you're listening to it totally out of real time, and that's great too. Welcome. But if you are like a lot of folks right now, you might be in the place where that New Year energy has worn off. The routines you set up with so much excitement, they're starting to feel super hard. Maybe you're questioning whether or not you even want to keep going. And look, I get it. Okay, this time of year is peak drop-off season for a reason. At the beginning of January, there's all this novelty, new goals, new habits, new routines. Your ADHD brain is lit up by all of it. There is dopamine, there's excitement, there's possibility. But by mid to late January, early February, get out of here with that. That shiny novelty is gone. It is not so shiny anymore. And suddenly, the thing you were so excited about just seems like a slog. And today, I want to offer this episode as a nudge of encouragement, as a way to say, keep going, you've got this. But it's probably going to come from a slightly unusual angle, because what I want to talk about today is that growth and change feel bad. Yep, it feels bad. So if you are feeling this resistance, if you're feeling this push-pull of whether you actually want to keep sticking with the new habit or the new routine or following through on that goal you set, it makes sense. In fact, I think it's probably a sign you're doing it right because you are leaning in. You're making things happen. Your brain is probably freaking out a little bit from that, which makes sense, as we'll talk about further in just a minute. Because the reality is growth is hard. Change is hard. In fact, I think the personal development space kind of gets this wrong. They do not share the truth of how uncomfortable it does feel to grow. Instead, it's just a depiction of the after. It's the celebration of the butterfly after it shed the cocoon. There is confetti falling from the sky. Everyone's cheering one another on. We're all manifest your dreams. And look, I do love a good celebration. That's why I'm always talking about celebrating your wins. But here's what doesn't get mentioned. That butterfly we're celebrating, it's first a caterpillar that literally has to dissolve into goo. Okay, it has to break down completely and reform into something entirely different. And that middle part, that goo phase, is messy and uncomfortable and nobody wants to talk about it. Actually, I'm going to give you perhaps an even more relatable analogy because we aren't caterpillars turning into goo. But when you do strength train, okay, when you've lifted heavy stuff, you're creating micro tears in your muscle fibers. Okay, that soreness that you feel the next day, that ache that you're feeling, if you're doing it with proper form, that's not a sign that you injured yourself or that you did it wrong. That soreness is actually growth. The discomfort is the transformation that's happening. The muscle only gets stronger because it has to repair all of those little micro tears. So when you're feeling resistance around your new habit, when it feels hard to stick with the routine, when your brain is telling you it shouldn't be this difficult, that resistance, that's a micro tear. That's what growth actually feels like when you lean in and you do the thing, even though there's that resistance. And because nobody talks about the discomfort, we interpret it as wrong. We think, what's gone wrong here? This is supposed to be amazing. Where's the confetti falling from the sky? Why does this feel so terrible? We take the difficulty as a sign that we should stop, but it's actually a sign that we're doing it right. So with that in mind, let's talk about what's actually happening when we're in that discomfort. Why does change feel so bad? I tend to think of three main reasons. Okay, three core reasons why making lasting change feels so uncomfortable. And I think once we understand these reasons, they can stop throwing us off. So the first reason is that we have to face some uncomfortable truths. When we want to make lasting change, we can't just skip ahead to the new version. We have to actually look at what we're currently doing, our current habits, our current routines, our current beliefs. What comfort or familiarity is that current habit providing when we're scrolling late into the night or devouring the bag of barbecue chips before bed, when we're procrastinating rather than sitting down to actually write the article we want to complete? What are we avoiding by staying where we are? That habit of scrolling, of procrastinating, whatever it is probably serving you in some way. We want to look at that. We want to look at those tough realities that part of us certainly wants to ignore. Working through the negative self-talk, the chatter, questioning these beliefs we've held for years. I'm just not a person who does this or that. I'm just not a person who follows through. I'm just not a writer. I'm just not someone who sticks to a routine. This uncomfortable work of having to look at the beliefs, look at the stories, look at why we're doing these certain things, it gets skipped over by most of the traditional advice we're given. We're sold the fact that we can just jump straight into the transformation, but you can't. You can't pile a bunch of new habits on top of old patterns. You have to first examine and challenge those old patterns and start shifting them into the new ones. Otherwise, we're building this expansive house on top of sand. We need to get rid of the sand, pour a solid foundation, and then build on top of that. And that examination is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. The second reason why I think change and growth feels terrible is due to identity loss and often some grief. This concept, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I heard Mark Manson talk about it in one of his podcast episodes. His podcast is called Solved. And he said that when you make a significant change, it's actually like there's a death of a part of your identity. And when we have that identity death, that part of us, it involves a loss and genuine grief. Even those small changes that we make challenge our core identity. I'm someone who goes to bed early versus I'm a night owl. That's an identity shift. I'm someone who exercises versus I'm not really a gym person. Identity shift. I'm a business owner or I'm building a business versus I'm comfortable in my 9-to-5. Identity shift. So amidst this loss and grief, there might be quite a bit of confusion, maybe anger, maybe resistance, maybe frustration. You're literally saying goodbye to a piece of your identity. Even if that version wasn't serving you in the long run, there is still loss, and that's intense. That's uncomfortable. And it's totally normal to experience it. And then the third reason is that our brains tend to actively resist change because we have evolved to conserve energy. We want to conserve energy to stay safe over thousands and thousands of years. So when we come along and try and start changing, that demands energy. And it also introduces uncertainty. So your brain is going to fight this because it's doing its job to try and conserve energy, keep you safe by doing what's familiar. And now we're like, hey, brain, we're going to change a bunch of stuff. Doesn't go over so well. In fact, I think Lori Gottlieb talks about this really beautifully. She explains how even positive changes, seemingly positive changes, you start a new job or you move to a new city, you create this new routine, whatever it is, there's a lot of uncertainty involved. And as humans, we generally do not like uncertainty. We would rather be uncomfortable in something familiar than risk uncertain, unknown situations. That's how our brains are wired. And for ADHD brains specifically, I think this hits even harder because we have that novelty-seeking piece that does get us started. But then when the dopamine drops and the novelty wears off, we're left facing all of this resistance. And we think, well, see, clearly I'm not meant to do this. I can't stick to anything. But actually, again, you're facing something completely normal. It is biological resistance to change. We just aren't taught that it feels this way. So we think something has gone wrong, again, because we don't have confetti and theme music. So, okay. You know why change feels hard, but what do we actually do about this? Well, before we talk about specifics, I want to ask you, have you taken my free quiz? It helps you discover your unique overwhelm type, and I designed it specifically for our ADHD brains. In just 7 simple questions, less than 1 minute, you'll discover your overwhelm type, the way it presents for your brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps that help you shift from overwhelm into action today. You can head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz, take it now, and get your personalized results. Okay. Now let's talk about how to actually make lasting change, even though we have all of this resistance against us, because I know this sounds kind of heavy. But what I want to tell you is that this awareness we just developed, it's actually quite empowering, because when you know the resistance is coming, when you can anticipate it, it can't throw you off as much. You can prepare for it. You can support yourself through it, and you can keep going, because it's not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're on the right path. So here's how we can set ourselves up for success to make these lasting changes. Step 1 is to do a full body yes check. We want to pause and make sure that this goal is actually your goal. This habit is actually your habit. It's one you want to make. So is this goal, this routine, this habit, is it a genuine full body yes, or is it more of an intellectual should? So an intellectual should or an intellectual yes, this is when you need to really talk yourself into something. You need to find a whole bunch of compelling reasons. You try and find all of this evidence to try and convince yourself why you want to do it. I really should go to bed earlier. I've just read that a lot of successful people do, and Huberman talks about it, and I just hear it all. I really should probably just get to bed earlier. Or I should meal prep because I know my colleague does it and she just says it's so much easier, and I know that it would save money and I'm trying to do that. It would probably just be really good. Or I should start waking up at 5 because that's what they say in the morning routine books. Whatever, okay? We can build a whole case for why these things are a good idea, but if it is not a full body yes, if our bodies do not feel light and expansive about actually doing the thing, it is not going to stick. So a full body yes is different. A full body yes goal or habit or routine, whatever it is, when you think about it, your whole body shifts. There's just this expansion, like an opening in your chest. Your whole body is like, yes, this is what I want. You genuinely want to do it, period. The brain will come on with a bunch of compelling reasons after, but it starts in your body. You're like, yes, that's what I want. And here's why this matters. Change is hard enough already. I just gave you a whole bunch of reasons, right? Change is hard enough already. If you're trying to make a change you don't actually want, you're just doing it because someone else said you should, or you've seen other people do it, or you've learned growing up that this is what responsible adulting is, whatever. If you don't actually want this as a full body yes, you're going to be fighting yourself twice. Once against the inevitable change that will come because we're fighting against change and the brain doesn't like that, but also against the fact that you don't actually care that much about it. And I don't mean that in a judgment way. I mean that in truth, that if you don't want it, why waste your time doing it? We want to focus on the things that are a full body yes, a reason why, a compelling pull. That's where we put our energy. That's where it's worth it, because that's where it's sustainable. So I encourage you to think about right now, whatever goal or habit or routine that you're working on, is it truly a full body yes? Or is it more of an intellectual should? If it's a should, I invite you to really pause here. Give yourself permission to either just let it go or adjust it so it is a full body yes. But if it's a full body yes, if that's what we're working with, then we're going to keep going. We're going to move to step 2. Also, if you want to take this concept deeper, if you haven't heard me talk about the full body yes yet, I do have a whole episode on it. So I'll be sure to link to that in the show notes. I think it's number 172, but I'll put it in the show notes. Okay. So step 1, make sure it's a full body yes. Step 2, we want to get crystal clear on your compelling reason why you're going to do this. Look, you're about to be goo in a cocoon. Okay. You're about to feel those micro tears in your muscles. The reason you're doing it has got to be strong enough to keep you going through that discomfort. Now, the why, the compelling reason, it's going to probably be pretty deeply personal to you. Okay. I'm not going to offer compelling reasons because I don't know if it will land with you. It's very personal. It connects to something that you truly value. It's got to be something that is specific to your life, in your situation, in your desires, not because I should or because it's healthy or because someone else does it and they have success. It's got to land with you. Write it down. Seriously, why are you doing this? Why are you willing to feel uncomfortable? Why are you willing to face the resistance? What makes it worth it to you? Give yourself a bunch of compelling reasons that grow from that full body yes, and then you can return to those reasons every time it gets hard. Then we get to step 3, which is to choose your approach. Now, this is where things get a little interesting because I'm going to give you 2 completely opposite approaches. They're going to sound very contradictory, okay? One approach is incremental, one is all in. And depending on the way things work for you, what your life looks like right now, the type of goal you're working toward, one will probably work better than the other. Now, before we go into the actual approaches, I'm going to give you a couple of questions to help you know which approach might be a better fit for you in this season. Okay, so I invite you to ask yourself 2 questions. The first question stems from the work of Gretchen Rubin. I've mentioned her several times on the podcast too, but she has this framework that I love, which is, are you an abstainer or a moderator? And I'll link to her blog post about this. But basically, she has 2 categories, abstainers and moderators. And abstainers tend to find it easier to give something up entirely, to abstain from it, or to go all in and just do it all. So examples of this that Gretchen Rubin would talk about is, I just don't eat sugar, right? I don't eat sugar. That's easier for her than I'll have just one cookie. The black and white rule feels easier for an abstainer. Moderators, on the other side, feel really quite restricted if they do that all or nothing. They can get a little bit frantic from that. They feel much more free knowing, look, I can have one cookie. That's fine. That feels way better than the total all or nothing. The gray area is what feels sustainable for the moderator. So this is the first question. Am I more of a moderator or an abstainer? The second question consider is, what is my capacity right now? Am I in a demanding season, big work projects, family stress, health challenges? Am I managing multiple areas that need a lot of my attention? Or is this a relatively stable season? Other areas of life are pretty much on cruise control and you have the bandwidth to go all in and focus on one. Okay, so here's your quick gut check. If you're an abstainer in a stable season, you might want to do that all-in approach. If you're a moderator or you're in a much busier, more demanding season, I highly encourage you to go with the gradual approach. Okay, trust your gut on this. I'm going to talk through both of them, but I would use that first as a guideline to help you make a decision. So, first approach is our gradual under the radar method. Here's how this one works. Okay. It's small steps to create this steady progress. You're basically sneaking under the radar of the brain's resistance. Again, the brain is uncomfortable with change. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't know what to do when we're changing and challenging the norm. So we want to make very small steps where we kind of go under the radar. So if we use bedtime as an example, maybe you start moving your bedtime earlier by 15 minutes instead of jumping from 2 a.m. straight to 11 p.m. Okay, that might be too drastic. So you go in 15-minute increments to 1:45, you work on that, then 1:30, work on that, etc. Your brain doesn't freak out as much about this smaller shift because it's subtle. You're not shocking the system. Yes, you still feel the resistance, but it's in more manageable doses. And then over time, you look back and you go, what? Look how far I've come. This is amazing. This is actually the approach I used to reduce my work hours. Okay, so I love my work. It is my hyper-focus. It is my special interest. It is what I want to do all of the time. But I also know that I need to nourish other areas of my life too. So what I had to do was start reducing my work hours by 15 to 30 minutes at a time. So there were times where I was working until 8 p.m., 8 to 8, because I just loved it. I was all in. So I was like, okay, Paula, we got to pull this back. So I would stop at 7:45, practice that for a while, then to 7:30, then to 7:15, so on and so forth. Now I'm between a 5 and 6 window most days. But if I tried to go just stop at 5, no matter what, I mean, I did try that and I would fail every single time. I knew I needed gradual here. And when I did it gradually, my brain adapted and I was able to make that sustainable change that now between 5 and 6, I know I'll be done. Now, the other approach is the all-in method. Just as it sounds, this is where you make one significant change all at once. You go all in with total focus, non-negotiable mindset. Now, this is a little bit more controversial. This goes against all of the rules and guidelines. It goes against what I talk about quite often, which is the small steps is what wins the race, or whatever the phrase is, okay? But I also know that for some of us, in certain seasons of life or with certain goals, the cold turkey, all-in, non-negotiable approach is really effective. So for myself, I actually was able to do this with going to bed. I kept pushing my bedtime later and later. This was years ago. And I got up quite early to get on the pike to get into my office at the university. But I kept pushing back my bedtime hours. So it would be 12, 12:30, 12:45, 1. Like it just kept getting later. And when I'm getting up at 5, that's not a great mix. So I realized, okay, it's just got to be 10 p.m. every single night, no matter what. Now, if I didn't stick to it one day, it's okay. I'm just back at it the next day. I kept showing up no matter what. Now, I find that this approach works, that kind of stark contrast from the old pattern, because it's so clear. It's so clear, and it's the only thing. So I didn't have reminders going off for all the different habits and all the routines. That was it. There was no gray area. I knew that at 9:30, I let out the dog, we go up, I brush my teeth, in bed, lights out by 10. That was it. Did I do it or did I not? Crystal clear. And that clarity was so powerful. But here's the critical caveat that I really want to highlight. Please, please, please hear me. If you are leaning toward the all-in approach, this can be your one and only focus. We don't have the capacity to do this all-in approach in multiple areas at once. If you're struggling in another area, if you're juggling a lot, if you are caregiving and working on your business and also going to work and you're trying to do all the things, it's not going to work because this takes too much energy. It requires all of it, all of your capacity, all of your mental bandwidth. But again, at times it can be quite effective. This, as I mentioned, was what I used to really drastically change my bedtime years ago. I went all in 10 p.m. no matter what. I dropped the expectation that I should also be journaling and doing some meditation and doing my morning routine. No, none of that. Get in bed by 10. That's it. That's the one thing. And that stark contrast made it so much easier for me than the gradual approach, because I would get stuck in the gray and I'd be like, well, it's 11:45, but I mean, what's 12? Who can, and I would just keep playing with it. But I had to have that clear cutoff. Okay. Now, here's the other part about the all-in approach is to put a container around it. You all know I love working in containers. Now, the latest research I've come across is that lasting routines and habits need about 66 days for them to become automatic. So I encourage you to put some sort of container around it so that you keep showing up for it. Maybe bring in some accountability, work with a group, something like that, but commit to a container of time, go all in. And then after that, you can reassess. Is it feeling more natural? Has the resistance decreased at all? Do you want to extend the container? Are you feeling pretty solid? Do you want to make any changes, right? This is a chance to really reassess and readjust if necessary. Now, for those of you who might be feeling a lot of resistance of 60 days, 66 days, 70 days, whatever, that's so long. That's 2.5 months. Yes. But if it's a full body yes, and you want to go all in, your brain will probably be a little bit less resistant to trying that longer container of time. Okay. So if you're feeling so much pushback, then either try the smaller step approach, and the all in just might not be a good fit. And also double back and make sure this truly is a full body yes, that you genuinely want it. Okay. I know this wasn't like a typical pep talk on how we stick with our routines and habits and stuff, because, we talked about caterpillar goo and micro tears and grief and discomfort. Okay. It's not the sunshine, rainbow, confetti version. But the truth is, I think when we can know the reality of change, it's so much more empowering. When we know that resistance is supposed to be there, then it doesn't derail us nearly as easily. When we know the discomfort means we're growing, we keep going. I promise you are absolutely capable of making any changes that are a genuine full body yes for you. And now you understand what's actually happening when the resistance comes up. That soreness in your muscles is growth. The resistance in your brain, that's normal. The grief around shedding your old identity, that means you're transforming. So if you're in that end of January, early February slump right now, or really any time that you're working toward a habit and feeling that slump, if you're questioning whether or not to keep going, here's what I invite you to do. Number 1, check in. Is this still a full body yes? If so, number 2, remember, why am I willing to feel this discomfort? Why is it worth it to me? And then number 3, choose either the gradual step-by-step where you sneak in under the radar, or go all in. Trust your gut here. And then keep going. I promise future you will be so grateful that you didn't stop when you turned into goo. The one who has actually built the muscle, the one who has become that butterfly, the one who stepped into that new identity, they're going to be so grateful to pass you. The resistance you're feeling is proof that you're doing the work. So keep going. You've got this. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes, where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you're ready to discover the unique way that overwhelm presents for your brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps to shift from overwhelm into action today, be sure to take my free quiz and discover your overwhelm type. You can tap through the link in the show notes or go to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.